Now we're here with Cassie Canastra of BASE, the Buyers and Sellers Exchange. Cassie, thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule to meet with us today.
You're quite welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us about, you run the day-to-day operations here at BASE, so what is a typical day like for you, Cassie?
It's always very different, I would have to say. I mean, it's pretty consistent what we do, but there's always new people coming in and out. I think that's probably why I love my job so much, because there's never a dull moment. And you're always meeting and seeing different people, and obviously different things come up and situations you have to handle, but it's never dull. Typically, we have a fish auction and a scallop auction, so fish auction's at 6 and scallop auction's at 9. So that's kind of what I'm doing, running the auction, handling the vessels, and we're here unloading from after the auctions are over from 11 a.m. all day, all night to the following morning.
Wow.
So constant. Basically, once an auction's over and I sell the product, it goes out the building and we're getting ready to put more in for the next day. So
your days start very early.
Yes.
And very long.
Yes. So it's not usually, I mean, like we're like our office, like I'm not here too late into the afternoon, obviously, because it's an earlier day, but.
So how did you get involved with all this?
Good question. So my dad obviously is Raymond. So he was, obviously I saw him doing what he was doing when I was a kid. And I distinctly remember when we were living on Bridge Street in Fairhaven that I would beg him to take me to the auction in the morning. I was probably 5 or 6 and I would beg to skip school. So, can I come with you? I want to come. Because he would leave like at 4 in the morning. Because at the time he'd go drive by every single dock to see who was in from fishing, who was out. And then he'd go to the auction, run the 6 a.m. auction. So I thought that was so cool. So I'm like, I want to go with you. And like, you can't come, you can't take school off. So anytime I had a day off and he had an auction, I would go. Okay. And I, obviously, like best day ever. I'd go, I'd follow him, I'd get up really early and go in the truck. And I remember he had like binoculars that he would literally like look for the boats, and I would look too to see who was in, who was coming in, because obviously now you can literally look on your phone and see who's coming and going on an app. But back then there was none of that, so he would have I thought that was so cool. And then we'd go to the Portuguese bakery, get stuff for the auction. So the fishermen had like desserts and treats to eat, and I'd sit there eating my malasada and I'd be watching the auction. And he was the auctioneer, like he was running the auction and talking to the boats, and there was we'd have a room full of fishermen. And I just thought it was so cool. And I'd be like, that's my dad. Like, that's what he does. So obviously I thought that was really cool. And ever since then, I just was really involved. I always wanted to know what was going on, passionate about it. And I went to college. I went to Holy Cross in Worcester. And my dad kind of pushed me to be a lawyer. He did not want me to get involved in the family business. I think just because there's not many women, honestly, in the waterfront. And someone like him was pretty overprotective. He didn't know how that would work. Obviously you're dealing with fishermen who can be a brawly bunch. So having to have his daughter in that kind of environment, I don't think that was going to work for him. So eventually I remember like having this distinct moment in college where I was like, I want to take over the business. Why wouldn't you let me do that? And I called him and said, I'm doing it whether you like it or not. So I kind of just sort of honestly weaseled my way in, and I've been here ever since I graduated college. So, and I've sort of just watched and learned, watched my uncle, watched my dad, and slowly but surely took on more things. And obviously my college background really helped. And then after Holy Cross, I went and got my master's at SMAS, so the School for Marine Science at UMass Dartmouth. So I have my master's in fishery science. Oh, wow. Thought that would be something different, just because my dad has, his fishing background. So that's how he relates to our customers. And then my uncle, obviously doing sales and business. I was a history major in college. So I wanted something that would provide that. So now I can go to a lot of fishery meetings and actually know what they're talking about because I have an education in it. So not only am I trying to help our fishermen and navigate that, but I also have an education. So I feel like I can try to kind of bring both worlds together and help mediate in a way. So, yeah.
Well, that's great. And I'm sure that your uncle and your father feel very comfortable with you in the realm here.
Yes, definitely. I think now as years have gone by, and I mean, you saw in your interview with them that they went through a lot.
They did.
To pave the way for me. So I consider myself very blessed and lucky to take this on, and that they did all the hard work. That's what I like to say. They did the hard work. They've created this, and I'm just very fortunate they are allowing me to kind of bring it into the future and on to the next chapter and hopefully take care of it and do even better and bigger things. So. Oh,
that's great. You're being a Canastra, you're very involved in the community yourself. So what are some of the things you're doing in the community?
So I'm on a lot of fishery-related boards and coalitions and things like that. So like I'm on the Fishing Heritage Center board. So we pretty much started that I think 5 years ago, our anniversary is coming up. So that was taking the Working Waterfront Festival idea and making it an everyday kind of, you can call it a museum, but we don't like to say it's a museum because fishing is still happening, so it's not a thing of the past. And it's just all about education. So that's like my biggest passion. It's like what we do here is amazing. Like people come here and they're like, wow, you unload boats like this and you sell, this is crazy. We had no idea this is happening over here. Some people in our area have no idea.
Wow.
Fishermen are fishing, and we're the city's the United States' #1 port is right here. And people don't even know that. So that's like one of my driving passions, is how to educate the public. And so that's something I'm involved in and hopefully will continue to educate. It's not a daunting task, but a little bit, just because sometimes fishing gets a bad rep too, just because people think that people are out there and, pillaging the oceans and taking all the fish and there's none left. But that's not how fishermen think. Fishermen are thinking, how do we preserve too and work together to save fishing so that way we can keep making a living but also have fish to fish in the future. So I think that's something that it gets lost a little bit. So to tell that story and to also tell there's a story behind it. There's a community behind it. There's families that are depending upon this, and they don't want to see it go away either. So we fish very sustainably, but sometimes that message gets lost a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good that you're involved in that committee, so that you can actually share that education, because you're right, it's very important. We don't know how lucky we are to live in New Bedford area with the top fishing industry right here,
It's crazy, yeah.
So we're very blessed. So what are some other things that you do in the community?
So I also sell real estate. I work at Howe Island Realty in Fairhaven. So I've done that on the side for a while.
As if you weren't busy enough, right?
That's what everyone always says, like, you do that too? And I'm like, yeah. I'm passionate about houses. I love it. So I've done that for about 7 years now. Okay. So I do that, and obviously most of my time is here. Obviously involved in St. Mary's. I've been a member. I've gone there since I was baptized there. So very involved with that.
So singing, you used to be in the choir.
Cantor. Yep, I used to sing at church. So hopefully now that the pandemic has passed, I can go back to doing that, because singing
another
was
hidden
a no.
talent that people don't know.
Yes, that I can sing. Yes. So.
Good. So being the day-to-day operations here at Base, what's the future? What's the future for Base?
I think the future, I would say the future is very bright. We just recently, so I think my uncle talked a lot about the old software that we had that came from Iceland, and in the past 2 years we changed the software over to be it's cloud-based. So it's all brand new. I helped design that and make that transition. So now it's iPad friendly, iPhone friendly. So definitely very advanced tech-wise, and a lot of our buyers weren't happy at first. Again, they don't like change. They were like, oh, I don't know how to, because some of them didn't even know what a browser was, like in terms of how do I log in? I'm like, oh gosh, this is going to be a nightmare. But we made the transition, so just updating things like that. So I think for our future, it's just, we do majority of the scallop sales in the U.S. we unload most of the fleet on the East Coast. So just really to keep expanding that. And then for ground fish, kind of bringing that back a little bit, because that was the auction I remember going to as a kid. Okay. And we had so much fish, and then with regulations, they kept cutting what they could catch over time, and now a port that was maybe 100-something vessels going ground fishing is now 12.
Wow.
So it's crazy. Yeah. So my goal, obviously, like I was saying to you, is like that message, but also how do fishermen work with scientists to figure out what really is going on out there? Mm-hmm. So we do a lot of work with that. That's something I'm really passionate about, because something's not making sense. Fishermen are saying they're seeing fish out there, and scientists are saying there is none. Mm. So there's a lot of surveying that fishermen are trying to do, like, can we take our own vessels and go surveying and go with you and figure it out? Whereas they have their vessels they use that don't know how to catch fish. It's a whole, I could talk to you about that for hours, but that's kind of our work in hopes that will come back, and we're starting to see it a little bit. So we just bought a groundfish vessel, the Marguerite C, named after my grandmother.
Oh, nice.
Very nice. We're hoping, and we figured it makes sense, it's a good investment, and it's going to bring fish to the auction. So we're really just trying to build that back up again, because we were considered a natural disaster, like a disaster in the U.S. with groundfish when it crashed, when they cut us down in regulations. So we've come a long way. That was back in like 2010, 11, 12. Okay. So hopefully that's my goal, is to see that come back again, because that's what made New Bedford what it was. And then scallop sales went through the roof, and that became the thing, which we're very grateful for. But I think hopefully groundfish will come back.
Good.
So running all of that's kind of been my along with running base is managing the boat and doing things like that. So busy.
So the future is bright.
Yes, definitely.
Good. Well, Cassie, I want to thank you for anything else you'd like to share about base.
I think I covered it. But if you have any other questions for me,
Okay, no, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to come and talk to us about base, and thank you for continuing to educate us also.
Yes,
no problem. A lot in the fishing industry. So that's and your continued exploration of that is excellent.
Yes.
And the younger generation, I'm sure that younger generation taking over, and which is very comforting. Like I said, for your father and your uncle.
Yes, definitely.
So thank you, Cassie.
Thank you.
And continue the great work you're doing for the fishing industry here in New Bedford.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. We're back with Jerry and Ayako Rooney from the Whitfield Manjiro House, and today I'm joined by my co-host, Isaiah Benoit. We're very fortunate to have him with us today as a co-host.
Yeah.
Welcome, Isaiah.
Thank you.
Welcome, Jerry and Ayako Rooney.
Thank you very much.
So I'm going to let my co-host start our questions.
So can you tell us how you guys started this organization?
Okay, well, it goes back to the fact that Manjiro was the first Japanese person to live in USA, and he lived in this house, the house of Captain William Whitfield, who rescued him. And so with that in mind, over a period of time with interaction with his hometown, which is Tosa Shimizu in Japan, in 1987, a group from this area went to Tosa Shimizu. Ayako went with them, as a matter of fact, as one of the translators, and they signed a sister city agreement. And that's way back. So now, for 32 years, we have been the sister city to Manjiro's hometown, Tosa Shimizu. Also, just to bring up to date, in this building, the building was for sale in 2008. And Dr. Hinohara, who is a well-known doctor in Japan, heard about it, and he said it's too historically important to let it go to condos. Mm-hmm. So he started fundraising in Japan. He raised over $1 million, bought the house, had it renovated, and he came over on May 7th of 2009. May 7th was the first day Manjiro lived in the house. Wow. So they celebrated that. He brought 100 supporters from Japan with him, and we had an all-day celebration to dedicate this museum. And so now for the last 11 years, we've had more than 8,000 visitors to this museum, about 2/3 of them being Japanese, some from all parts of the world, actually.
So the two of you have been instrumental in really forming the society. So what led you to do all that?
Well, Ayako was the one who was involved directly because she was part of the initial committee that signed the Sister City Agreement. And of course, thereafter, when the committee had different events and all that, they called upon the spouses, I guess, to do their part. And so eventually I got involved, became part of it as well.
What was it like going back to Japan?
It was so wonderful that if I were in Japan, I would have had just a very ordinary housewife kind of life, and with good friends and within a very comfortable Japanese culture. But once I came over, it's just very exciting for me. And then I was just determined to make myself very happy here. And then I decided to involve with the community where I live instead of missing Japan all the time. So I lived with the American family, and then testing time was that right after 1 year I was going to SMTI and try to major psychology. Mm-hmm. And then I was so loved by and with this couple in America.
You have a big family.
Yes. Yeah. And really, she always felt guilty. They're having wonderful time with me, like daughter that she never had. But I felt bad for my mother in Japan. But eventually my mother and my father visited us 2-3 times. And now we really had a picture perfect, like that kind of relationship.
How long have the two of you been married?
50 years.
52 years.
Or 52
It'll be 52 this year.
Good,
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah.
And you have 2 children?
Yes, we have 2. A daughter, Monica, majored in Japanese at UMass Amherst, my alma mater. And coincidentally, during the summer between her junior and senior year, she spent it in Japan with Ayako's mother, who didn't speak English, which was great for the Japanese learning.
Yes.
And then we have a son, Mark,
Yeah.
who is located in College Park, Maryland. He has the Mark Rooney Taiko School. He teaches Japanese taiko drumming, and he's been all over the world with that. Yeah.
And both your children are also involved in the society.
Yes. Yeah. When we had our last festival, the Manjiro Festival here, which was 2 years ago now, or a year and a half ago, Mark brought his whole unit up from the Washington, D.C. area, and they were the main entertainment at the town hall. Yeah. So it's been over a year since we've had the Yes,
festival.
that's right.
So how has COVID affected the museum?
Well, actually, the museum has been closed for about 15 months up until June 6th of this year, and we are now reopened by appointment.
Okay.
And people are reacting right away. I have like 6 or 8 tours all lined up real quickly to include the whole Manjiro Trail, which is 8 places around Fairhaven that are pertinent to his life. And we had people yesterday came down from New Hampshire and so forth. Yeah, so it's catching on again, and we're just looking forward to being able to do more things. Unfortunately, we just recently had to make the announcement based on our board meeting that we will not have the Manjiro Festival this coming fall as we normally would do, based upon the COVID, international COVID problems. In Japan, the amount of vaccinations is not very high at all. However, the unique and ultimately dynamic thing about Tosa Shimizu, the sister city, to this date, they have 0 cases of COVID.
Wow.
Nothing.
That's amazing.
And as you're aware, they're so isolated. Probably that's the reason.
Right. Right.
But I would like to say that Manjiro was in Japan. While he was in Japan, after he returned, he experienced losing, 2 wives and 1 later again. Mm-hmm. But because of the pandemic, so Manjiro decided to make his sons deal with the public health. And then it's almost like here we have a lot of doctors monitored our pandemic condition, and he was that kind of doctor.
Wow. Well, I think that also from being in Japan and knowing it's probably the cleanest place I've ever been to in my life.
Yeah.
But the people being the nicest people I've ever met in my life.
Yes, I mean, one of the typical things would be if you go into a department store that has a 2nd floor, you want to take the escalator up. There's usually one of the workers staying there holding a cloth on the escalator band to make sure that it's clean for everyone that goes. You've seen that.
Right. So where we had to be reminded to wash our hands and to be clean, Japan had it marketed already. They were already doing that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that we won't be able to have the Manjiro Festival this year, but are there any other events that are coming up that we?
Yes, we'll be planning a more localized type of event. You've seen it when we do Ohanami, the cherry blossom festival that we do now. We used to do it in the park, but we don't do it there anymore. But we do it here and block off the streets and involve the tours of the house and so many other things and entertainment on the streets. So something like that will occur. I put out the announcement and mentioned that as well. We're not doing the full Manjiro Festival, but be on the lookout for a more localized kind of thing coming up in the fall.
Excellent. So there is some hope here for that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yes, and then we will approach Fairhaven High School, and they will have a Zoom kind of exchanges between the students.
Oh, great.
Because they are the sister school to Shimizu High School over in Manjiro's hometown. Yeah.
So what other future events can we look forward to?
Well, one of the big things that's happening right now is the actual renovation of the carriage house to make our new cultural center, which was actually part of the initial renovation of this building. However, they ran out of funds at the time. And so for the last 11 years, we've been working on getting that out, and it's actually happening right now. So as you're aware, we've taught maybe about 80 or 85 local teachers. But when we have done that in the past, we've done it in our own conference room, which limited about 8 people at a time. We are going to do that, by the way, in July. I just put out that notice as well for the part 1 and part 2. And we teach the whole Manjiro story, as well as whaling and local things, and a little bit of the geography and the language of Japan as well. So that's we have all the notices out now. We're waiting. We have a maximum of 8 people to participate, so first come, first serve, I guess. But however, when we do have the cultural center, then of course that opens it up to huge numbers of different kinds of things. We're talking about having a local, Japanese chat night, for example, where those who are learning just basic Japanese come in and maybe have a little refreshment and chat and so forth, and do right on the board, little games, and actually use the language. I mean, there's one of the ladies, what was she interested in? Origami. Origami, the paper folding. And of course, the flower arrangement, which is another kind of thing.
Lots of martial arts.
And martial arts, of course, yeah. So, tea ceremony, which would be very typical. Yeah.
Wow.
And maybe we might be able to rent the center for other organizations' functions.
Great.
Yeah.
So lots of great things for the future here.
Right. Between the 2 buildings will be a Japanese garden, which will be part of the whole thing.
Very nice. So how can someone get in touch with you? What would they do? Because someone watching this may want to take one of those classes.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Well, they can call our number here at which is 508-858-5303, or they can write email to jerry@wmfriendshiphouse.org. We'll give you a card and you can make that known to everyone. And just make the inquiry and we'll get back to them. And that's how we arrange all of the tours that are taking place right now in the same manner. Yeah.
Our member, Debbie Almeida, she already sent out to the teachers, and then she's really offering, if they want to, that class will be recognized as a educational master's degree or something, with her connection with Cambridge or college.
So they get college credits if they wish. It's another part of the program if they want to do that.
So you and Debbie are really instrumental in the educational part of this.
Well, I may say
that's
Debbie,
absolutely, yeah.
really Debbie. Yeah. I'm helping her because she's very enthused about Japanese culture and teaching and sharing.
She also plays a very important role in the society.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, she's our secretary now, by the way, the official secretary.
Excellent. Good. So you've given us the email, you've given us the phone number. If someone wanted to arrange a tour, they'd also go by those means of getting in touch with you?
Yes, yeah. And let me give you one more number, which is my home telephone, which is 508-995-1219. That's our home phone. That's more direct, obviously, because I do come into the office every day and check, and I call in to check the messages on the phone. But we can get it either way, and then we keep a master calendar of all the tours coming up and so forth, so that we can, and we take a whole sheet of information, so we make sure that everyone's on the same page and knowing what we're doing and so forth.
So can anyone join the society?
Yeah, as a member, yes, absolutely. And we have a whole listing of current members of the society itself. There are about 158, I believe.
Wow.
But we also have another listing of what we call friends, those who are very helpful but not necessarily members. And we're going to invite them specifically to become members and add on to it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Very good.
Then we will be really emphasizing, educating the young people. So we'll be getting involved with other organizations from other states who are running the Japanese school in the United States.
Okay.
And plus Fairhaven and surrounding towns. And, we'll be really expanding. And what Manjiro felt here and experienced will be Fairhaven's young people's experience too.
That'd be great, and that's why we have Isaiah here today too.
Right.
The young people of Fairhaven need to hear this story. It's so important to know the story of Manjiro and come here. And it's right around the corner.
And we do the opposite as well, because we have gone to the different schools around, including Fairhaven schools, and given a presentation on Manjiro, so that right in the schoolroom itself. So we've done that on several occasions, and we're quite willing to do it.
Very good. Well, I want to thank you both for bringing this story to life, here in the town of Fairhaven and for the world, because we have people from all around the world coming here to Fairhaven to see the Manjiro house and to learn more about the story. So I thank you very much for bringing that, and I hope people will join the society. I love being a member of the society, and I'm truly honored to be able to go and participate in events in Japan, and thank you, Ayako, because you always translate everything that I say so well, and I appreciate that. My Japanese is not there yet. but
you have a wonderful spirit.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we want to thank you and your whole crew for spreading the word for us, because you have a huge audience, we know, and that helps us greatly in terms of projecting the future for the organization.
Well, thanks again for all you do and for bringing this story to life, and for your society and your board and everyone that's involved in making this a huge success in the town of Fairhaven and the world. And I also want to thank Isaiah for being here today as my co-host. Hope I see you again as a co-host on the show.
Yep.
All right.
I'll be there.
All right. Thank you, Isaiah.
You're welcome.
All right. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, both of you.